ठीक है. हाँ. Punita Ben, Jaimini Bai, distinguished visitors from home and abroad, members of the board, students playing football, faculty and friends of the library. Good evening to you all. I'm Arthur Duff, Head of Library Services at the Lilavati Lalbhai Library. This is a great day for CEPT University. On behalf of our librarian, Tejaswini Joshi, and her team, I welcome you to our library on this very special occasion. This is the day that we are receiving into the library the collection of more than 1,200 books made by the Mehtas, a collection made by the Mehtas over 50 years. 50 years of learning, looking, and wondering. Some time ago, they approached our president with the idea that they would like to donate their library to CEPT University for the benefit of the students and the faculty, and indeed for anyone else who would like to be inspired by their passionate engagement with architecture and design. Both he and our provost were very eager to have this collection for the university and are sincerely grateful to the Mehtas for their generosity and their thoughtfulness. As I keep reminding all of you, the library is the knowledge hub, the very center and beating heart of our wonderful campus. The role of the library is not only to be the source of information and the repository of knowledge, but it is also the vehicle for engaging all our faculties on campus to optimize the use of these resources. How the library grows is by the active participation of all the faculties, through the attention of their dedicated faculty members who supply us with their recommendations for purchase. In this way, our collections remain relevant and up to date with reference to the studios and courses being taught. What the Mehta bequest, and indeed any other such bequests and donations to the library, is to push boundaries as a place of possibilities, such that the unexpected can also be found. As you know, the CEPT Exhibition Centre at the library is the place where we promote excellence across all the different disciplines represented on the campus. It is very appropriate that the current Excellence Awards form the backdrop to this special occasion. The books collected by the Mehtas represent a lifetime's commitment to the pursuit of excellence in their work as practitioners and teachers. This is the tangible record of their professional life. The collection also recalls a life being lived to the full, ranging beyond the confines of their work and holding the memory of the sheer pleasure they take in the world around them. The global network of architects and thinkers that they are connected to can also be seen in the material. So from our side, can I thank Harsh Bhavsar, our FD alum, who has managed the compiling and production of the catalogue, as well as the recording of the oral narrative with Jaimini Sir over many weeks during the autumn at their home in Baroda. Thanks also to the campus office team, the IT team, and the CEPT University Communications Office, all of whom have facilitated this event. As usual, coordinating for the library is Payal Dan. Thanks to you all for coming and for your continuing support of CEPT's commitment to building a better world through the agency of our 5 faculties. The exhibition of a selection of books from the bequest that you see here with us on the podium will continue at the counter inside during the week. Please come again and bring your friends. And now, on behalf of our president, Dr. Bimal Patel, who regrets that he could not be here, having been called to Delhi at the last minute, we welcome board member and CEPT alumni, Mr. Achal Bakeri, who will introduce Jaimini to us. This will be followed by a brief talk on the collection by Jaimini Sir. And after the lamp lighting and signing of the contract and the handing over of the catalogue, we are having an informal discussion with the Mehtas on the idea of a library and the value of books to architects and designers. We will be joined by Dr. Gauri Bharat, Dr. Seema Kanwalkar, Dr. Kaiwan Mehta, and former head of library services, Professor Snehal Shah, all of whom are wonderfully committed to sharing their diverse range of interests. And after all that, there will be chai and dry biscuits. Thank you very much for coming. So can I invite Achal Bhai to come?
Good evening. Though cliched, neither Punita nor Jaimini Mehta need any introduction at CEPT. Punita, who has been here since 73. Many of us overlapped with her back in the 70s. And Professor Mehta also has been associated with CEPT since 76. And having been here for nearly 40 years, from 76 to 2014, thousands of students have known him. So while Punita graduated from CEPT, did a master's in Australia in urban design, and Professor Mehta did his undergraduate in MS University in Baroda, went on to do his master's at UPenn in the US, and thereafter worked with Louis Kahn, also with Michel and Jagola in the US. And he has, over the span of the last 45 years or so, taught at various universities, whether in the US or in Baroda, and of course here at CEPT. He has also written many books. One that he has co-authored on Louis Kahn with Jagola, and 3 that he has written on his own, one of which was on Fatehpur Sikri. So his interests are really breathtaking in their scope, all the way from classical music, whether it's jazz or classical music, to jazz, to poetry, to architectural history, to modern architecture, to teaching, to the practice of architecture. It is really, I would say, an honor for CEPT to have had him teach at CEPT for all these years. And now it is, I would say, CEPT's great good fortune that he is bequeathing his priceless collection to the school. Some 1,200 books, some of which are more than 100 years old. He was just telling me that one of his books was first printed. It's the original print of a Charles Dickens book, which goes back to 1863. That would be priceless. Just that one book would be priceless. So really, truly, CEPT University owes a deep, deep debt of gratitude to both of you. And on behalf of the Governing Council, I thank you for that. And with that, thank you very much.
Something very interesting happened a few months ago when Punita and I decided to bring all our books here. The books have been with us in a way which is almost like saying that the collection has grown over many years. And I had never really thought of the whole collection as a whole, only books that I need. It is only when we met Bimal and Tridib Bhai and Arthur to work out the modalities of this, it dawned on me, and when we met, I went back, sitting on my desk, looked at the library. I looked at that as a collection for the first time, as if it has its unique identity of its own. And then I sort of realized that, my God, what an eclectic collection it is. It has been put together not consciously. Unconsciously, you go to the bookshop, pick up something that you like, read, it sort of takes you somewhere else. And so this whole way of making this collection has been unself-conscious. And I just this morning talking with him, it occurred to me that it's like having a daughter which is born in your house. You raise her, and she becomes a beautiful young lady. And she's also part of your life all the time. You never see her as somebody independent of you. She is part of the life until one day she comes and says, I'm engaged, or something like that. And suddenly you think that, she is a person on her own right, with her own personality, which I never consciously, objectively looked at. So in a way, this is a kind of an engagement ceremony for our daughter. Unlike other engagement, we are postponing the marriage as much as possible. The books are not going to come here immediately because both of us are working and referring to books all the time. So the arrangement is that whenever we feel that we are now beyond that stage where we need or read book, then that is when it should come here. But the decision has to be cast in stone, which is going to happen today. So the engagement is there. I thank you for attending it. And Achal and Bimal and everybody, we are now in-laws. Vevai. So that puts another thing, but that's a part. Let me briefly tell you how the collection happened and more important, how it began. I guess it helps to have grown up at a time when there are no TV or no mobile to distract you. So you read and you play cricket when you are not doing any mental work. This is what I did. However, books, when I grew up and went to college in Baroda, School of Architecture, books were very expensive. And very few people could actually afford it. There was a very interesting coincidence. I used to bicycle to my college. And like many schools, it began at 7:30 and 1:30 we came home. On the way, there was a bookshop. It's called East and West Bookshop. It was run by a Maharashtrian gentleman, Mr. Pagedar, Mr. Bhanu Pagedar, who also happened to be our neighbor and a good friend of my father. We used to call him Bhanu Kaka. And he was devoted to his books. He was a lifelong bachelor. And we got along very well. So I used to stop at his bookshop at 1:30. And we made an arrangement that he allowed me to pick up any book, browse through it, read. He gave me a chair in one of the corners. And like his name of the bookshop suggested, East and West Books, he had books from all over the world. And mostly used by MS University of Baroda, which was also young at that time and was in the process of acquiring books. Various wonderful people teaching there from all parts of the country. So they are buying books. And so there was a wonderful collection. And I used to stop by there, maybe pick up a book and read, and then come back when the stomach gave you a warning that now you have been without a lunch for a long time. So that's what. There are some books which I referred more than many times. But there was always this nagging feeling that why can I not take this book home and read at night or whenever I feel like it? That never happened. On my 20th birthday, just a couple of months before I was to leave for America, Bhanu Kaka came with a gift. And of course that was a book. It was Siegfried Gridian's Space, Time and Architecture, which I must have opened up and browsed through about 24 times in his office, may have left some thumb marks, which he could not sell. So he came and gifted me this book. And the whole idea of holding a book in my hand that is mine, actually it had a strange effect. So one of the first thing I did when I started earning in America, we used to get our paycheck twice a month, every 2 weeks. And it was my routine that one of those paycheck day, going back home, I would stop by in a bookshop and buy books, browse through for a couple of hours, buy a couple of books. The other paycheck day, it would be the music. So these were two passions I had. And most of this collection happened during the time that I was there in US for 10 years almost. And later on, when I went there to teach every alternate semesters, that is where a lot of acquisition occurred, because the bookstores there are phenomenal, large, and you get lost looking at books. And so I don't know whether this whole notion that knowledge is indivisible, that you don't have silos of architecture or science or literature, or that there has to be cross connection. It happened because I had that kind of a collection, or the collection happened because I thought like that, is a moot point. I'm not going to, it's like whether it's chicken or the egg, which come first. So it's not something that one can elaborate on. But this is the essence of the library that I have. Now I can think about that as a library, not as books. Now it has a character of its own. And when we talked, I requested Bimal Bhai and others that it should be kept as it is and not split up into various subject sections. And I'm thankful that everybody has accepted that. So it'll be a library within the library. As I said, don't hold your hope up that you will be able to see in a year or so, because we are going to need it for a while. And so the marriage will have to be postponed as long as we can make it. Thank you very much.
So can we call upon Jaimini and Punita to come and help us light the lamp? And Anita ma'am, and Achal bhai, and Tejaswini ben, and then Chirayu bhai. So it looks like this marriage has been sanctified solemnized. The engagement, at least. Sorry, I should say the engagement has been now signed. And so now we have the handing over of the catalogue by Jaimini sir. So if you'd like to open the Tejaswini Ben. Kali beche, bepanna, bas, kali bepanna. Okay. And now I'm going to invite them to start chatting about the library. So as such, the formalities are over, and we have now committed to receiving, and the Mehtas have committed to giving. And if I might move to now the pleasure of talking about library and books and what this represents to, we've understood a little bit from Jaimini sir where it came in his mind, but perhaps from our side, what such a gift is and what are books to each other. So maybe I'll ask Snehal sir to start this off.
Take very quickly.
Good evening, Jaimini, Punita, Achal, friends. I want to read 5 lines from a book review it's a book, it was a bestseller in America called Aristotle's Way. When it comes to happiness, perhaps it's actually time to say out with the new and in with the old. It talks about happiness, how Aristotle wrote about how to get happiness. And he says happiness doesn't come from money, status, everything. So where does the happiness come from? It says, in the 4th century BC, when he wrote the book, the Greek philosopher Aristotle developed a framework for inner contentment around an idea that feels entirely relevant in the 21st century. That the foundation of being happy comes from doing what is right. He says that by doing right, that's when the pleasure comes. Pleasure doesn't come by making money or status or anything. If you believe that the goal of human life is to maximize happiness, then you are a budding Aristotelian. And Jaimini, today, you are truly an Aristotelian. Because what you have done is the right thing. And Punita was just telling me that she wanted to keep 1 or 2 books also, okay? These are very good books. And Jaimini said, no, we give everything. We don't keep anything. So I think in terms of Aristotle, Jaimini, what you've done is the right thing. Because it is, and I'm sure it gives you a lot of pleasure. The second, quickly, I want to say about, many years ago, Tejaswini Ben will know, the library didn't have money. And they were asking for money from people. So our library said that we will have 1 transferable lifetime ticket, so that anybody who pays that money will get that ticket free. There were 3 people who paid the money. One was Professor B.V. Doshi, second was late Hasmukh Patel, and third was me. And I paid the money, and I still have that non-transferable lifetime ticket. So I can give it to my daughter, and daughter can give it to someone else, if SAP adheres to these terms. So I knew about it. The library didn't have a lot of money. Of course, books too. So when I became once Bimal came to my office, Bimal saw a lot of books in my library. And what Bimal says, how come you have got so many books? So I said, when I'm very happy, I buy a book here. Bimal being Bimal, he says, what do you do when you are so sad? I said, I buy 2 books here. He just laughed. Because where does the pleasure comes from? So when I became the director of the library, the first thing I decided that we should get some money, which we probably were getting slowly, Anu and all were there. But the second was to get books from other alumni and requested them to bequest their books. So we had a lot of people. One of them was Bharat Dave, who died. And we worked out that the University of Melbourne sends everything free of charge and also paid for the seminar and everything and get the books here. So when this was doing, I was sent a little write-up by, of course, Bimal, which I put it on my library door, which says, there is a great deal of difference between an eager man who wants a book to read and a tired man who wants a book to read. There's an eager man who wants to read a book, but the tired man wants a book to read. So what, Jaimini, I have to tell you at the end is that please, I'm sure you must be feeling sad because your daughter is going away. But let me tell you, you got and you found a perfect son-in-law who is going to take a lot of care of your daughter and maybe more than what you've taken care. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, and it's wonderful, this occasion of sharing and gifting books, and especially from somebody. I literally have 2 houses of books of my own, so I have a library of my own, and it's good that I'm not married. I don't own a house, I don't own a car, so all the money goes in getting books. And I don't have a library because I literally live in a godown of books. And books, I think, exist as a passion of reading, but they are also a passion of collecting. And I think both these combine very interestingly in all our lives, because at all points in time, it is books that keep us connecting with many things around us. And it's the pleasure of a library like this, or the library that all of us have grown in, or the early days like you shared when you had probably 200 or 500 rupees and you went to a bookshop 2 to 3 times to decide which is the perfect book to buy in that 200 or 300 rupees that you had, to the pleasure that one has today of buying books literally easily, also with many sort of digital platforms, etc. A few but very good bookshops that still exist, especially in Bombay, that one has access to many books. But also it becomes a certain question as to how do we live with all the books around us. And I think it's Umberto Eco who said that, somebody asked him, do you read all the books in the library and in your personal library? And he said, I don't keep used things. So there is a certain pleasure in the books that keep rotating in your life. I think all of us have the experience of not always finishing books. All of us have the experience of not always reading books, the front cover to the back cover. But they are literally there in eager moments, and they are literally there in sad moments. And they build this little world around you. And it's a bit scary. How do you share that? How do you share that world, or how do you give away that world? And it's the same thing when you're part of an institution. I've been very closely part of the Kamla Raheja school at one point in time, now part of the CEPT institution. And I'm discovering great gems in this library. I think gems that have been forgotten in many corners of this library. So whether it's an institutional library, whether it's your personal library, they become these sort of microcosms that hold you in some way. And to get a library within a library, I think it's fantastic. Just some of the books that one was seeing there, like Pablo Neruda, and you say, shit, long ago one sort of read Neruda, and you sort of missed that, and you want to go back to it. And that's what sort of hidden corners in your house or the library do, especially when I think with many of us here have these varying or traveling interests. There is an interest that travels you into literature. There is an interest that travels you into history. There is an interest that travels you into say Indian aesthetics, and they build up and they grow, and at some point you don't know what to do. And this is a moment that is also making me think, as a person having a library or a godown of books by myself, as to what will I do with all of that one day. And probably the best thing is that it becomes a shared world with many others, as it has been my own personal world. So thank you very much, and I'm so happy I'm part of this. Thank you.
I would first like to recollect my association with Professor Jaimini Mehta. We co-guided a PhD student together, and I remember when during one of her reviews we were discussing, and we were actually discussing with each other. So it was a beautiful dialogue that I have, and since then he's been like a mentor and a wonderful source of inspiration. So thank you, sir, for always being there. And I've called him, and he's picked up his phone even in Germany, saying, you know what, Seema, I'll call you back. So I think that association is something that I'm very, very privileged to have with you and Punita ma'am. And as far as books, I was reading the preamble to his note, which is like almost like a constitutional, statement for the library at CEP One Hopes. It says library without walls, and something I keep telling my students is that reading books is an adventure. It's not about you reading. If you're an architect, you have to pick up only books on architecture. You can pick up a book on philosophy. You can pick up a book on humanities. You can pick up a book. So it's all about discovering several layers to your reading, and the joy. It's such a joy. I grew up, from 7th standard reading Tolstoy and Anna Karenina and Shakespeare and Charles Dickens and the French writers, and I think it has made me what it is, and I'm so glad I was born in 1965. I don't want to, that, please don't calculate my age, but, I'm, no, so I'm so glad I wasn't born in this time when I share friendships over books. I share friendships over what we read, and not over Instagram or Facebook or. So whenever I meet Kevan, he has this list of books, or when I meet Gauri, she has these list of books, and I think it's a bonding. Books are such a wonderful bond, and I'm sure all of us, when we travel to other cities, one of the first beeline we make is to the nearest bookshop. So I think books are adventure, books are joy, and it's a discovery of sorts which one hopes, and also literature. I think one of the most important aspects of reading books is literature. We forget that, just because we are architects, we shouldn't read literature, or we shouldn't read, anything. But it is the space, and it is the human qualities of the writer that actually transport us. And I think it's so important for architects and designers to read a Pablo Neruda, for example. And I hope Jaimini sir's collection will add, that emotional angle to his beautiful poetry and his beautiful, works, and transport us to another level altogether. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I don't have a large collection of books, but that is largely because the CEP library has pretty much been my refuge for more than half my life. Sorry? So yes. We'll not have that discussion right now. But it's absolutely thrilling to hear that this lot of books is coming. I'm particularly excited that the books are going to be kept as part of your collection. And there's a small anecdote regarding you, Professor Mehta, that I'd like to share. I never had the privilege to be your student, but I was a bystander about 20 years ago during a studio conversation. the student who was supervising had gotten quite agitated. And we were on the studio above, and suddenly we hear a very loud noise, a loud voice accusing the teachers of not understanding what the student was trying to say. And it was very intriguing because until that point, I hadn't heard a student yelling at a teacher, and that is what was going on. But Professor Mehta, you never lost your cool, and you kept telling her that, let's talk about this, let's listen to this. And honestly, I was really surprised. And at moments of extreme frustration, when I deal with a particularly difficult student, that is the single memory that pops up. The grace with which you handled a very, very angry student is something that I so vividly remember. And it really is one of my outstanding memories of what the teachers at this school were and what the school stood for. That is the sort of generosity with which you dealt with students. So coming back to the library is a place of refuge. Each time I don't know what to do, I take a walk through the library. And seeing your shelf there is going to remind me of that moment each time. And thank you very much for creating a very, very strong connect and for reminding us of the person behind the books as well. Thank you so much.
So thanking all our contributors for being so generous, sharing their particular experiences, and once again thanking the Mehtas for their generosity and for knowing that they're going to be present here forever at SEPT in the library. So for those of you who have the time, please come and enjoy looking at some of the books that are here. And lights are coming on, and there's a little cup of chai as well. So please, let's move to a little bit more relaxed gathering around the books. Thank you very much for coming, and looking forward to eventually seeing our new daughter-in-law.